Hello, League fans, and welcome back to the 2017 North American Challenger Series. I am Optimus Tom Surfos, and of course, joining me on the desk tonight is none other than Mark Zimmerman.
Yep, a little under the weather today. Just had a little bit of a sore throat, but unlike Dash, I'll come in no matter what. So here I am still.
Ouch. Well, you don't look like you're feeling that bad. You look like
I mean, this is me under the weather. All right.
You should see him when he's feeling great.
Yeah.
Well, we're heading into week 3 of Challenger, so tonight we'll mark the halfway point of the split. And as we approach this midpoint, there's no single team that really looks like a clear frontrunner.
Right. I mean, coming into the season, we expected Gold Coin United to be the best. They were really hyped up, but the competition is keeping up with them. We have 2 teams who have gone 2-0 so far, but both those times that they went 2-0 were against Team Gates, who is the weakest team so far in the Challenger Series, and it kind of makes sense that they're the ones that they've beaten.
And that really does wind up speaking to the level of competition we're seeing this split of Challenger, which is pretty much the highest it's been.
Right, and pretty much every single team has some pro players on it. There's been a huge influx of the amount of LCS experience that teams have. The exception, of course, is Team Gates, and you can kind of see they look more like a solo queue team, especially when they're behind.
Yeah, and while we give some context to that as well before we get into tonight's matches, why don't we take a look at the standings and how they stand right now. Delta Fox and Tempo Storm are those 2 squads that are tied for first place, just ever so slightly ahead of the rest of the pack, where E United, Gold Coin United, and Big Gods Jackals are all tied at 3rd with 2-2 records. And as we mentioned before, Team Gates still struggling to find their first win tonight. They're on the bottom of the standings with 0 points right now. So on the docket for today, we'll first follow Gold Coin United in their battle against Tempo Storm. Then later on in the evening, we're going to catch up with Delta Fox and E United for Game 2 of their series. And closing out the night, we'll get to watch the conclusion of Big Gods Jackals and Team Gates.
Right, a lot of good matchups today. I'm especially interested in the one that we're going to be starting out with.
Yeah, so why don't we just start right away? Talk about the first matchup. Gold Coin United going up against Tempo Storm. Now on paper, we said this before, Gold Coin United has been the team to beat, but so far, we've only really seen kind of mediocre performances out of them.
Right. Currently, Gold Coin United has the longest average game time of about 44 minutes, and that's pretty long given the current meta. Most games are not going that late. Mad Life was the big pickup for this team. He missed week 1. He came back week 2, but the team has mostly looked the same in terms of their struggles in the game and not being able to close things out. The Challenger AD carry definitely even said that he was overrated and that he didn't feel like he was, he shouldn't be respected that much. And we've seen Gold Coin United trying to fix some of these issues by swapping out the AD carry that they're pairing with Mad Life. They had Rikara in for one game. They switched to Mash Me, and so we'll have to see who they go with today.
There's some big words coming up. I'm definitely saying that maybe give Mad Life a little bit too much respect. But today they're going up against Tempo Storm, which is another team with a star-studded lineup, specifically their bot lane. And they're trying to get ahead of the pack in this one. They're tied in first place with Delta Fox right now, but they're trying to set themselves apart from the rest.
Right. The team does play a little slow, not so much a Tempo Storm as a Tempo Drizzle. They're the second lowest kills in the NACS, only above Team Gates. They tend to get the lead early, but then they can't pull the trigger and extend the mid game, which is what you really want to see out of coordinated teams. Quas is able to create some space when he gets his unique picks, but the team itself doesn't seem comfortable with them, as quite as comfortable as Quas seems by himself. And even Freeze has said that the team is split on how much they actually enjoy playing with them. So they seem to struggle with exactly what their team wants to do. The one exception is when they do get their hands on their pick comp, they're able to get a lot of stuff done.
Yeah, if they're able to utilize those ultimates together and really kind of make use of the space Quas is giving them. We've seen them do pretty well so far, but one spot Tempo Storm is looking to create an advantage in is in the jungle, because Sentinel himself doesn't really think much of the competition.
I'm not really scared of anyone. I know the people think that Santorin and Gilius are the strongest junglers just because they play a lot, but personally, I don't think that they're very good, or I don't think anyone's very good in terms of the jungle pool. It's a cocky way to think like that, but it helps me go forward and it pushes me. So I tend to think of it like that.
Well, it's hard to perform at your best when you're scared of the enemy, so strong way of putting it, I guess.
I guess it kind of lines up there. He says right there, just because you play a lot doesn't mean you're good, and I'm the living embodiment of that, I guess.
Yeah, how much have you played recently?
We should not talk about that. Why don't we start looking at the lineups instead? Why don't we start on the blue side, where Gold Coin United will be starting today. In the top lane, it's Solo. The jungler is Santorin. Mid lane is Phoenix. The bottom lane is Mash and Mad Life.
Right, and on the other side of the rift, it is Team Tempo Storm in the top lane. Quas, the jungle is Sentinel, who we just heard from. Mid, Hat-Tricks, and in the bot lane, it is Freeze with his support Sheep.
And both of these teams coming in, some pretty big names in their lineup. We already discussed Gold Coin United not necessarily living up to the hype. Tempo Storm, technically they're tied for first place, so they're coming in kind of riding a little bit of a high themselves. But like we said, they're very controlled, very methodical with how they play, which is something that we're not entirely used to seeing out of the Challenger Series in general.
Right, and I mean, the things that we are used to seeing out of the Challenger Series is weird picks, and I think Tempo Storm is probably the team with the craziest picks, which is why it's going to be really interesting to see what they do today in the draft phase, because we are in that 10-ban system, and it can benefit players like Quas.
Right, and Quas has already been able to bust out the Alawi. He's busted out the Swain. He's played Camille when that was left open, so he has been able to show that if you do leave up these powerful picks because you think Quas is only going to be able to play his specific champion pool, he can run away with an entire game because of it.
And that Camille pick he actually did look good on. We've seen a couple other people in the Challenger Series get their hands on the Camille just because it's open, and they didn't look 100% comfortable on it. Quas was not that way. He looked very, very comfortable on the Camille pick.
And on the side of Goldcoin United, we've also seen some interesting picks specifically out of their bottom lane. Madlife, he wasn't in week number 1. They wound up using YN as their sub support, but both YN and Madlife have kind of gone with this more melee, tanky support style. They picked up Rom, both of them.
Right, and you might say it's something that the team actually likes playing with so much as that's Madlife's champion. I think that they tend to pick really aggressive champions in other roles, and then you need some kind of beefy frontliner, and it often gets stuck on the Madlife. I wouldn't mind seeing him on something that's not that, something that's more meta currently, though we're not exactly sure if that, like we said, was Madlife's decision or the team's decision to do that.
Well, they did say Madlife has been a very big voice. They didn't have him week number 1. They went 1-1. They got him week number 2. They still went 1-1. So
Yeah.
now's the time to make that voice have action behind it. As we are already in the ban phase, we see the Vi being banned out right away. That's been kind of a go-to for Sentinel. He hasn't really been a favor of the Kazakhs. The Rengar has never really gone through picks and bans, and that Vi is really crucial to that kind of pick composition style they've been playing.
Right, you pair it with one of the 2 utility AD carries, Varus or Ashe, you get a lot of CC coming in. Sometimes they even have the Malzahar to follow up, a Syndra, some kind of burst to your mid laner, and that's the kind of comp that they seem most polished on. So very good to see Goldcoin United taking that one away with the Vi and Vi ban. Then they have the Aurelion Soul ban. On the flip side, Tempo Storm doing what looks like the standard 3 bans so far. Rengar, Camille, we'll have to see if the LeBlanc comes in as well.
Goldcoin United maximizing the fact that they start on blue side, but like you said, going for those more targeted bans, leaving Tempo Storm left to kind of say, well, we don't want you to get this. You know, we don't want solo playing the Camille. I mean, the Camille at this point in time has seen competitive play in multiple positions. We've seen it jungle, mid lane, top lane, support.
Everywhere but AD carry.
I mean, maybe Mash has a really good AD carry Camille. I highly doubt it, though. But.
No, as we see the Ivern ban, the last thing coming in for Goldcoin United, something that's been rising in priority for a lot of teams as time has gone on. And it's something that is just very unique and hard to deal with if you don't have much experience against it. The way that it jungles, what its kit does, it's just a very difficult champion to deal with because he just gives so much utility to the rest of the team in terms of his shielding and the healing that he gets with Redemption eventually, and just the frontliner that comes with him in Daisy.
And it kind of speaks to the fact that, hey, if you're banning this against Tempo Storm, they were the utility-based team. We've seen Freeze playing the utility AD carries. We've seen a lot of lockdown coming out of all of their support pickups. So going for the Ivern when the Vi has been banned away must be something that Sentinel's been practicing. We've seen it a lot in the EULCS. We've seen it kind of cropping up all over the world. But with the last ban of Kazakhs coming in because they don't want to face Santorin on Kazakhs in the jungle, it leaves open a lot of powerful stuff, LeBlanc being the one that's picked up first.
Well, the thing I like what Tempo Storm did here is a couple times now Phoenix has got his hands on the LeBlanc and has not looked particularly impressive. So I actually don't hate the idea of keeping the jungler pool more neutral and giving Phoenix the LeBlanc until he finally shows that he's extremely competent on this champion. And it's actually not just Phoenix too. A couple of the other challenger mid laners have not shown too much proficiency on the new LeBlanc. So I can understand if there's an OP you're going to leave up, it might be the LeBlanc.
We saw Fox leaving a little bit to be desired when he played LeBlanc with that dive composition with him and the Nocturne kind of suiciding for kills. He had a really tanky Maokai to back
Yeah,
back
they didn't
him
have
up.
that Maokai. I don't know how well that comp works out. So,
But as you did mention, last time we saw Phoenix on the LeBlanc, they played like that kind of pseudo poke and pick style where the Braum was their only tank and they played the Jace in the top lane, so they had like a double carry pokey composition, and it took them a very long time to close the game out against, I believe it was E United in that series. That was the one game they wound up winning, however.
right, and we see Tempo Storm grabbing Ryze and Varus, 2 of the strongest picks available in their respective positions. Of course, they basically traded the LeBlanc for the Ryze so that they could get that. That, of course, also gives you the Varus, and without any junglers, which is often what you see people grabbing in the first rotation. With so many of them banned, it's not too surprising to see people looking for other things, as Goldcoin United has gone with Zyra.
Yeah, one of the most powerful supports left open in the pool. It, of course, pinches that later on. So now Tempo Storm, there's a lot of junglers already banned out. They're kind of left with that decision. Do we go for a support and get the jungle pool kind of clamped down on us? Or do we pick up that one jungler we can and then leave open all these potential support bans?
Right, and we see now that they have decided to go with the Jhin last, I expect to see Tempo Storm grab a support here so they don't end up too pinched and end up with a lopsided draft. I mean, the thing that you would expect, of course, is the MF, generally the counter to Zyra, but a lot of people actually don't play it. Even in the LCS, despite the fact that it's a well-known counter pick, a lot of people don't seem too comfortable on it. And it's not too surprising to see them actually elect to go with the Karma. While it doesn't actually bully the Zyra quite the way the MF does, it is a champion that does pretty well against Zyra with the speed ups and poke that she brings.
I'm actually surprised to see them not go for the Malzahar now that that's left open. They utilized that one very well in their kind of pick composition they ran in week #1. The Vi was a key part of that, though, coming out of the jungle, so with that banned away, maybe they're kind of pivoting. The last composition we saw them run was a Varus, Karma, and Rek'Sai combination, which was like the dollar store version of that comp, where they tried to lock down single targets, but there was just not enough chain CC to actually keep them in place, not enough global pressure either.
Right, it's really hard to even call that the same comp at that point when you're losing all those press R, person can't move abilities. And we see instead that people are starting to focus more around the top lane for the bans. Fiora going in for Tempo Storm, Goldcorn United, of course, getting rid of Quas's Alawi. Regardless of if you think that champion's strong or not, you just hate playing against it because you don't know what that thing does. You try and gank it 2v1s you. We saw that happen in one of the games, so just get it off the table. Don't think about it anymore. Start focusing on what they want to play.
Yeah, and with the Maokai banned away, that kind of leaves open the option. There's a Nautilus, there's a Poppy, there's a Shen that we've seen rising in popularity, trying to maybe force Quas into that tank versus tank metagame. We heard from Freeze saying already that Quas doesn't really want to play those kinds of champions, so if you're kind of pigeonholing his sort of unique champion pool and forcing him into that matchup, you may wind up getting something that will benefit solo.
Right, and I mean, they do end up with the Kennen last ban, so if Quas does end up wanting that Swain or something, it is still available for him, but I doubt he'll pick that in the first rotation here. Instead, most likely going to see a jungler come in. The ones that are up that are still strong are things like Lee, Rek'Sai, Elise. Going to have to see what Sentinel decides he wants to go with. We have seen a bigger pool of junglers recently, though. We saw Nidalee coming in, Eve, Kindred, a lot of those coming off the back of Moon in the pro play, so of course, it ends up being the standard Lee Sin. Not going crazy here.
Nah, maybe not too crazy here, but the Lee Sin with the Rek'Sai still open, we could potentially see Goldcoin go for something along those lines. Santorin has kind of been a historically favoring Elise. It has very easy gank potential. You just lock somebody down with the Cocoon. They are going to wind up picking up the Shen, however, for solo, potentially putting him into one of those more advantageous tank versus tank matchups. Shen's kind of been cropping up in popularity as opposed to just defaulting to the Nautilus when the Maokai's kind of been removed from the equation.
Yeah, and Shen is one of those champions that the more coordinated you become as a team, the better he is. He doesn't win 1v1 super hard. He's not the tank that jumps into a fight and is just this unkillable monster that Maokai is. He's much more about setting up various TP plays and being able to abuse the fact that you're basically going to have double the globals with your ultimate and TP available. So Goldcoin United, they've been struggling in terms of their synergy. Hopefully the fact that they are picking the Shen shows that they're more comfortable together now as a team, and they're going to be able to force a lot of plays. The Rek'Sai, you talked about Santorin being good on Elise. He also played a ton of a Rek'Sai back on his time in TSM.
And not to mention the fact that now Shen kind of has multiple targets he can kind of tunnel into with this Stand United. The Rek'Sai going in, if you wind up building a little bit tankier, going to survive, be a really good dive buddy for that Shen to kind of jump onto, as well as LeBlanc. We've seen that being utilized in a couple of matches of competitive play as well, just bringing the rest of the people into the fight. But it looks like Quas has a couple more tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah, he's bringing out the Scion. I think he did it in one of the games from the first week as well, and it was not particularly impressive. So if you're talking about Quas's crazy counter picks and what you might be scared of, the Scion did not seem to be one the first time around. We'll have to see if it's going to look a little more impressive this time. The team comp as a whole for Tempo Storm is pretty early game focused in terms of the plays that they can make, in terms of what Ryze can do at 6, Lee Sin can do at 6, what Scion does at 6 when he just ults down a lane, those kinds of things. So I expect to see Tempo Storm trying to grab an early lead here, because on the flip side, the team comp that Goldcoin United has is extremely strong at all points in the game.
Well, Tempo Storm have been pretty decent at being able to grab control of the game from the early stage. The problem for them has really been wrestling what to do with it once you kind of crack that ring of inner towers, or sorry, the outer towers, and get into that center middle like area, the gooey center of the Summoner's Rift.
It's the gooey center on one side of the Summoner's Rift, because it's the base that you're going for, not the dead center of the river.
Yeah, I guess so. They have had decent war control in their previous games, but we'll have to see if Goldcoin United is even going to let them do that. Madlife now playing the Zyra pickup, one of the most powerful supports that we've seen so far in most recent competitive play. This is something that's departure from those tanky supports he was playing the first week he was back around. This time around we'll have to see. But somebody that has like that engage potential, that lockdown potential, that's what you're really looking for out of somebody who's supposed to be the voice of the team.
Right, and we see potentially one of these tricky level 1s that we've been seeing a little bit of in the Challenger scene. The Karma Q goes out, misses.
Ooh.
Not sure if Madlife showed when he popped out of the bushes. They're going to face check. Tempo Storm Season's going to be able to get away just fine.
Yep, so nothing too crazy going on. Just everybody saying hello in the bottom lane. Is we'll have to keep our eyes on where the junglers are really going to be here, because now that Tempo Storm has saw 3 in the bottom side of the map, they're getting some early vision down on the top side here. Santorin does wind up seeing that Lee Sin place that ward over the wall.
Right. And just to go back to what you were talking about with Mad Life being on the Zyra, I'm personally very excited to see this. It is a much stronger champion. If he's one of your best players on your team, you want to put him on something that he can actually influence and take the game over with, whereas Braum, sure, you can get a nice ultimate or block a key ability with his wall, but he's really not this aggressive champion that really takes over the early game the way a Zyra can really dictate how the laning phase goes in the first 10 minutes.
And this is the guy who made his name on hook-based champions, so he is a playmaking support. The definition of a playmaking support, pretty much, and he's an NA challenger. It's still kind of crazy to wrap your mind around.
Right. Zyra not the biggest playmaking support. She's like there's these like 2 categories that we see right now where like the Malzahar, though he does have his flash ultimate, the Zyra and the Karma are all more about bullying your lane than they are about hitting that one important hook or getting that one pulverized combo off on Alistar, which is another champion that Mad Life was always great at, as we see already chunked out to below half health.
Yeah, that's the downside to playing Zyra, is you're not exactly that tanky support that can dish out or take a lot of the damage that's dished out your way. And the Karma, she's no slouch in the bully lane as well, and Sheep, no slouch as a support player himself. He's had a couple of CS teams, a couple of NALCS appearances, and when he's alongside Freeze in this bottom lane, I mean, this is a pretty stacked competitive experience bottom lane altogether.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you put Mad Life down there, he brings enough experience for the other 3 roles. He could be 3 rookies, and you'd be like, yeah, it's pretty experienced bot lane overall.
Well, I mean, he's laning with Mash right now, who we were just talking about earlier. He's been around the competitive scene since early 2012, so he's been a name that's been around forever. Freeze has been around for a very, very long time in the European scene, and I mean, to be completely honest, like the newest 2 members you have on this kind of side of everything. You have Sentinel in the jungle and Hatrix in the mid lane for Tempo Storm, and then there's Solo, who's actually been an NACS staple since basically like late 2014.
Gold Coin United in particular, you would say have a ton of experience, probably the most in the challenger scene right now. Every single member having had played on the LCS stage at some point.
That's what makes it so surprising that they're still tied in that middle of the pack. This is where you would expect them to be in that #1 stage, but it's not necessarily the fact that these guys obviously they're not winning, but it's just the fact that they haven't had that time to gel yet. Mad Life, this is just the 2nd week playing. First week they had to use their sub YN, so we really, we're excited for this matchup because this is kind of like an LCS caliber matchup. We get to watch it here in Challenger.
Definitely. I mean, that's what people are going to be looking for out of Gold Coin United. They want to see them push up into the promotion tournament and see if they can challenge some of the LCS teams because, like you said, on paper, they look like they should be one of them, but unable to prove it so far in the challenger scene. So far, early laning phase, not too much happening. Most people just doing some standard laning, CSing, the general stuff.
As you do in lane, but they do have a nice roadblock in front of them with Tempo Storm already. Just 1 point or 1 match, technically, above them in the standings here as they are tied for first with Delta Fox. Sentinel's been going after that Scuttle Crowd control and will make his first appearance in the top lane against Solo. Is going to have to dash, is going to have to flash, but the chase after from Sentinel, is the damage quite there? Quas is going to wind up landing the axe, and he does pick up first blood.
You get to see that axe charge coming in, knows he doesn't have the jump to get away, doesn't have the flash up, he just charges it. Here, incoming death, drops it on, picks up first blood.
It's just impending doom, and Quas had played the Scion earlier. Wasn't the most impactful pickup, but with first blood under his belt, we can potentially see some nice stuff coming out from Quas.
Right, and I mean, the Scion pick isn't something that when you pick up first blood, oh my god, all of a sudden he's going to start destroying the Shen. It's still mostly a pretty stable lane matchup. It doesn't get influenced that much by a single kill, but it does probably help him deal a lot with the Shen, who generally should outtrade the Scion in the early levels. We saw a little bit of that as Santorin, a little extended in the topside jungle. Quas going to chase him out of there.
Yeah, he winds up getting knocked up from the Scion Axe as well, just being a little bit of a bully, chasing after Sentinel when his top laner had just teleported back to lane. Interesting buy from Quas on the Scion as well is a Doran's ring that he goes and picks up after this first blood. Come just straight textbook gang from Sentinel.
Right, I don't think is what people would be expecting at all with that. As we see in the replay, Quas able to pick up the first blood. That's what I was talking about, just charging that axe up.
It's impending doom.
Yeah, it's going to drop it in any second to finish him off. But yeah, the Doran's ring is definitely something that's a bit of a question mark. You would think maybe he starts building it, Bomby Cinder, get some health, have him help deal with like the push so he can just keep shoving the Shen in so he can match the ultimates potentially if he can recall off and get his own down somewhere. But instead, going with the D ring, hoping for better trades, probably maxing E to shout, get that shout damage up there.
I mean, we've seen it's kind of be a thing on Gangplank, so he can refund mana off of parlays. I guess Sion stacks up minion kills for his shield, but Patrick's going to be stacking up CC on top of him as Phoenix wants to picking up that kill. A nice flash assist there from Santorin.
Gold Coin is able to answer back, get a kill of their own this time in the mid lane, though, and we talked about how the top side matchup is not very volatile. LeBlanc matchups are.
Yeah.
So if you're able to get a kill onto her early like they just did there, she starts not only being able to pressure stronger in lane, but being able to threaten around the map much better.
And we know that Phoenix himself has been a very aggressive player, sometimes to a fault, but he will be one to try to push that advantage as hard as he can. And Hatrix in the mid lane has kind of been, he's been an unknown factor. He played a little bit in the Turkish league, came on over to Tempo Storm. This is like the first time we're going to be seeing him from like an LCS perspective for the LCS audiences. As Mad Life takes a ton of poke damage from this bottom lane. But Hatrix has kind of been a standout performer for Tempo Storm. He came in with probably the lowest expectations on the team, but he's seen a lot of focus. First, Fox and Gilius camped him all throughout week 1. He still made things happen on the Syndra, and here we're seeing some focus as Phoenix tries to get ahead.
Right, I mean, it's a good test to go up against Phoenix. He was generally considered top half of the league during every split that he was in NALCS, essentially. Always an extremely strong laner, very mechanically sound. Some communication issues, some coordination issues with his teams, but you know, it was never a question of his actual individual skill. And as we see now that he gets that first blood, just if Hatrix is going to be able to keep up with him.
He's got double Dorans and a Dark Steel, so he could potentially start stacking that one up. Started with the Dark Steel, actually, as he picked up the kill. Has 2 stacks on it already. Has gone for a pair of Merc Treads early on, so he does not want to be locked down by that Rise, does not want to be locked down by any of the CC chains coming out from that Varus, from the root coming out from Karma. Just wants to keep himself nice and healthy as he tries to push his advantage. We'll see if he can, because that's been one of the things that GCU and Tempo Storm have both kind of had a little bit of struggles with, is the early gameplay.
For sure. I mean, it seems like most of these teams are pretty comfortable in the laning phase in terms of picking up a kill or two with jungler coordination and things like that, but it's really what happens afterwards where we see teams start struggling. Like, now that you have that kill in the mid lane, can you sync up with your jungler and get a dive off on the bot side? Or can your top laner with TP advantage make something happen? It's those kinds of plays that we see teams struggling with more than just picking up a kill or two during the laning phase.
And we saw some botched attempts by GCU last week. There was the walk-in Rise dive, and then the follow-up Realm Warp into double kill for the Maokai that kind of sealed their fate in that game, even though it went on for a little while longer. But Tempo Storm has been one of those teams that's been extremely content to just farm it out. So I think the onus is on GCU in this one to use that LeBlanc effectively.
Right, and as we see, Tempo Storm does have some laning advantages already, especially in the bot lane, nearly a 20 CS advantage on the side of Freeze. And Varus is the strongest pick on this meta, so it's not too much of a surprise to see him winning the lane. But on the other hand, you do see Mad Life on Zyra, so you think that they'd have a little bit better of a matchup going on here.
Well, as we have seen, Mad Life's been taking its fair share of the poke damage in this kind of 2v2, very long-range mage and marksman kind of matchup here. The Jhin, of course, not necessarily as pokey as the Varus, as those piercing arrows. The best part about that is not only are you going to be able to shove against your opponent and get that CS while you're while you're firing those arrows, but you're harassing them at the exact same time.
Right, I mean, that's what makes Varus so annoying, is that he can CS while trying to poke you down, assuming that you're good at angling and setting all that up. See, once again, Sentinel setting something up in the bot lane. Quas walking down as well, trying to find an ult angle, but there is a ward for GCU deep in that lane, so they're going to be able to spot him out. Back off the turret, try and play very, very safe.
Yeah, it looks like Tempo Storm definitely trying to set something up, utilizing this bottom side of the map. We are going to see Santorin make his way down over here as well. So there's no threat at the dive from Tempo Storm, but that's another thing we've seen Tempo Storm do. Any of the advantages they have been able to get, while we did see an early gank on the top side for Quas, they're generally content to leave him to do his own kind of thing, and they really do want to focus on the bottom side of the map. Freeze has really been the engage tool for these teams.
Right, Quas, after walking down there, had to ult back top below that just to get in range. Clean up that CS that was going to go down under the turret if you didn't do that. And yeah, seems like Tempo Storm struggling to find a play after that first blood. I like the idea of sending Quas down bottom with the ultimate. It is one of those plays that can easily win you the bot lane, but it was just a little too telegraphed with GCU having the wards around to spot it, as we see Phoenix and Santorin trying to get something going on their own here. There's plenty of wards for Tempo Storm in that bot river.
It's also not that often you play against a Scion, so it's one of those plays you're just like, oh, you know, top laners will teleport in, like that'll be fine. All of a sudden you hear the Scion charge and it's in your bottom lane. Meanwhile, there's Sentinel continuing to hover around this bottom side of the map. There was a control ward in that brush, looking like he wanted to clear that one out. We did see Santorin place that beforehand as he was making his way down towards the bot lane to dissuade that dive. And as both these teams kind of set themselves up. Cloud Drake has been the first one to spawn on the map, so usually we see some action moving around the Dragon Pit, but Cloud Drake, considering these teams aren't necessarily moving around the map and swapping up sides of the lane, and the only real map movement has been Cross making a small appearance in the bot lane for a brief moment in time, that movement speed might not be as valuable. We might just see an extended lane phase.
Just to touch on a little bit about what you were talking about with the Scion going down bottom and trying to surprise people with the global advantage, Shen is actually one of the best champions for dealing with that. The fact that he can just sit in the top side and join in the fight once you realize, oh wait, that Scion actually is down there ulting into your lane. I'll just press R and protect you. And then the concern would be that if you do this against a champion that's not Shen, that champion would have to blow his teleport to do that. Shen just has to use his ultimate and matches the ultimate that Scion's using, and both people hold on to their TP. So you don't actually get that advantage out of Scion the way that you would against some of the other tank matchups, which is another reason I'm not a huge fan of the Scion here. It has a better laning matchup against the Shen than it does against something like the Nautilus or the Maokai, but it can't abuse his ultimate quite as hard.
No, that's very true, and that's why we've seen Shen kind of pick up in popularity. He's the tank that kind of does everything you want those Maokais and those Nautilus to do, or Nautilus to do, I guess. I don't know what the plural of Nautilus is. Multiple Nautilus. But he has that double global kind of synergy. So you have the ability to save somebody, you have somebody to use it as an initiation if you have a Rek'Sai or a LeBlanc like GCU does, and you of course have a fairly safe lane phase. Like you mentioned, you don't straight out win lanes, but in this matchup here, he's only a slight CS disadvantage to Quas, and that's only because there was a wave pushing his way. But GCU might be the ones that pulled the trigger first. They try to catch Zentinel in his own jungle. Between Phoenix and Santorin, they just pick him off.
They might not be done yet. They're looking down to this bot outer turret, trying to swing behind it, set up a play. They still have the Shen ult available. They're going to get the dive off down here in the bot lane.
Ooh, Sheep gets locked up with the Deadly Flourish. There's a teleport coming in from Quas, but there's that Stand United. The Chain of Corruption does wind up locking down Santorin, but he's going to be safe and sound. The Curtain Call was used as well. Looks like double globals have been used, but no one's going to go down.
Pretty surprising to see the way that played out. I thought the Shen ult was going to come in basically as soon as they showed, but obviously Solo and the rest of the team were not on the same page, as he didn't start channeling that ult out until the TP came out, so they didn't actually get the faster channel time and start that dive off before Quas could join, and ultimately they're forced to back away off that turret, just going to have to take the kill that they picked up onto Zentinel as their only reward for that play.
Yeah, they didn't necessarily get the dive off on the bottom lane and try to get their side of the map ahead. However, they do still pick up that kill on Zentinel in the jungle, which is... Zentinel has continuously been kind of poking his nose down in that bottom lane, trying to get some deep wards, trying to get vision over across his side of the river. It hasn't been working out, and the one time he thinks his own jungle is safe,
or still not.
The second time he thinks the jungle is safe, there's Phoenix going on a killing spree. So there's that LeBlanc advantage being utilized. They're camping the jungle.
This is exactly what we wanted to see out of the fact that Phoenix had gotten that early kill, not just sitting in lane and trying to bully out his laner, but moving on the map and setting up advantages for his team. Unable to actually get that dive off, but they did get the kill in the jungle, and once again they find Zentinel in the top side around his red buff, just trying to kill his little camps, do some cleaning up in his jungle, but unfortunately he gets picked off once again. And Gold Coin United looking pretty good relative to some of the stuff we had seen before when they had gotten leads.
Maybe Phoenix overheard what Zentinel was saying about the junglers in the Challenger series. It was like, listen, if you don't think the junglers are going to be a challenge, a new challenger approaches.
Yeah. I'll be the jungle LeBlanc that's just going to kill you when you think you're safe.
Well, that could be pretty deceptive. You never really know where she's going to be with that mimic mechanic she has as well. As she's continuing to just move around the map here. We do have a ward spotting everything out on Tempo Storm's side, so they know that Phoenix and Santorin are both here. Zentinel is kind of grouped up on the bottom here, but Phoenix going to just start himself back out. The Chain of Corruption winds up landing, but it's going to be Zentinel that flash and kicks Phoenix back in. The distortion was down, and so goes Phoenix.
I mean, there was just bad coordination on the side of Gold Coin United. They needed to wait for the minion wave to come in from their bot lane before they could extend past that turret. When you don't have that minion wave in, your bot lane can't actually join in on that pressure that you're trying to exert there. And they did have the global up on Tempo Storm, who had to blow the Scion teleport to defend that first dive. It would have been great if they could have done it the second time, but Freeze gets opened up on. He's going to have to flash away.
Yep, flashed out of the Zyra Strangle Roots. However, Sheep is going to block up the rest of the curtain couple that will force away the bottom lane from Tempo Storm. But the reaction from them is to group everybody else up in the mid lane. They're going to wind up burning the teleport here coming out from Solo. They're not going to be able to get that tower down, and Santorin goes in, tries to buy some time. He has to flash away from the Scion axe. The Realm Warp is coming in from Rise, however. He's in the middle of the fray. Solo's in the front as well. Both of these tanks taking a little bit of punishment. Santorin drops down. Quas is going to transform and get out of there. And Zentinel just kind of grabs onto the back of him and rides him out.
Yeah, I just want to get a little piggyback there for fun. Didn't really need to use that safeguard, but I can't say no to that.
Well, it doesn't have
Phoenix
available.
continue trying to exert his pressure over the jungle there, almost blowing up Sentinel a third time. He's just barely able to get out alive. And Gold Coin United, despite that little mishap in the bot lane, the fact that the gold lead isn't quite there, they do seem to have a lot of pressure just due to the amount of power that is focused onto the LeBlanc.
Yeah, she's got a Morella Namicon picked up already in addition to her Mercury Tread she picked up early on. So now she's got a little bit of extra damage coming in, extra cooldown reduction. The spell rotation won't be necessarily as painful for her, although still pretty decent. But when you're going up against that Lee Sin, who's just gone back, picked up Mercury Tread as his only magic resistance item, and this early into the game, you're still going to be popping that health bar down extremely low.
And this is kind of the importance of what we're talking about, getting the kills onto the right members of your team, getting that Quas the first blood for Tempo Storm. Well, obviously, I'm not saying don't get a first blood, but getting onto the right members of your team is way more important. So the fact that LeBlanc got the kill and then was able to start moving around the map with that advantage and kind of snowball the lead for Gold Coin United versus Tempo Storm, who's mostly just been hanging on, and Quas hasn't really been able to do much with that first blood. So Gold Coin United, obviously, much happier with the LeBlanc and what she's been able to do this game, but not actually having a huge lead quite yet. The gold is still very, very close.
Well, Tempo Storm was trying to make something happen on the people they wanted these kills on. They tried extremely hard to force something into the bottom lane and get some kills down onto Freeze so he can be opened up, take that tower down, and then start moving around the map like they have early on. But Gold Coin United was there. They caught Sentinel out in his blue buff side of the jungle, shut down that kind of strategy. And it's kind of funny to hear Freeze when we last heard from him saying that he didn't necessarily want to be the focal point. This is him kind of like rebuilding his image and reinventing himself, but everybody on this map, he thinks he's the focal point here.
Yeah, Gold Coin United's focusing him down, trying to dive him all the time. He's built up basically a 30 CS lead for himself as he's grouped up mid now, going to try and force down this outer turret in the mid lane. Freeze getting caught out.
Yeah, the run ward comes down, but it looks like nobody's going to go anywhere. Hattrick did come in, but Mad Life's already going to be taking down Freeze, so although he doesn't want to be in the spotlight, it just shines down upon him with that run warp, and he goes down.
Right, it seems like a lot of the people who try and use this realm warp try and get these panic ones out while they're getting CC, and then you don't actually go anywhere. So a couple of the rises showing a little inexperience on the champion as Gold Coin United is going to try and turn this push around and take their own mid-outer turret, and with the death of Freeze, it looks like they're going to be able to actually take this one.
Yeah, Cross has teleported in, but he is going to wind up popping the Silent Ultimate, turns into the choo-choo train, and tries to go in, but the tower will go down. Mad Life picks that up, but Rides picked up the first kill of the fight, taking down the tank, but Zyra on the backside will wind up picking up Lee Sin, and multiple kills are going down in favor of GCU. The curtain call comes out after 2 more deaths follow, and Quas being the only one left alive. GCU get the tower, get the fight.
Gold Coin United looked like they were overextending, trying to finish that turret off. Solo's going to go down early, but that actually just baits the rest of Tempo Storm into thinking that they're actually going to be able to win this fight. Of course, the whole time, Phoenix is left untouched. He's the huge threat for them, and he's able to go around that fight pretty much unfocused at all and pick up a couple kills with Mash shooting in that Jhin ultimate over the back of everybody.
And that all stems off the fact that they picked Freeze off first when it was originally Tempo Storm going here. There's not a lot of damage from the red team.
Right, so you see, Quas goes in here, they start focusing down Solo. He dies as the turret drops, which looks great, but then Mad Life gets a great ultimate here. Phoenix, like I was saying, is unfocused. He gets a good distortion onto multiple members of Tempo Storm. They drop everyone low and finish them off, and then it's just Quas left alive. Sure, he's a tanky Scion, but that doesn't mean he actually does anything back to you. It just means you can't do anything to him.
Exactly. There's also a very nice multi-man knockup coming in from Santorin over the side of the wall. So you took down one tank, but then the Rek'Sai was still able to get into your back line. So he's already picked up the Cinder Hulk for himself. He's a bit of a tanky beast to take down 1, 0, and 5 right now with Jungle CS could be a little bit misleading, especially with the way it's been done in this 2017 season. However, a 40 CS advantage can't be ignored over his counterpart.
Right. I mean, after a certain point, the CS differential becomes a little bit too much to just say, oh, that's just a couple more Krugs or Raptors. That's a legitimate advantage in the actual jungle pathing, which tends to happen with Rek'Sai, still one of the better farmers in the game, especially when compared to Lee Sin. And Gold Coin United has been able to actually balloon their lead basically to a 3K gold lead off the back of those mid lane plays.
Kind of helps when you have Phoenix bullying around the enemy jungler too, I guess, huh? But
yeah, people are scared to face him. He's able to pick up a bot lane turret by himself. Yeah, no one really wanting to match him in that bot lane. And it looks like Gold Coin United is going to set up their 1-3-1 here. They have a great comp to do it. They have TP and ultimate available for Shen to help Phoenix out if he ever gets caught out. But it looks like Phoenix is the one doing the catching.
Yeah, Hattrix just gets chunked to half off of that sigil pop coming out from the LeBlanc. Santorin also on the backside here. Just making sure that if Rise has any sort of antics up his sleeve, that he will be there to help his solo laner. And as you mentioned, the 1-3-1 split push setup, it's kind of online. They've already knocked down 2 of the outer towers on the bottom side of the map, and this is what we kind of had questions about. Like, cool, we've been able to see Gold Coin United kind of utilize some poke compositions, be able to take down some sort of advantages in the early stages of the game, but how do they transition it? They're grouping up, they're putting wards down between them and the 2 lanes that they want to push.
And I think the warding is a really good thing to point out, because you're wondering what is the influence of a ex-world caliber support like Mad Life over a game like this, and you see that they have 2 control wards in there, multiple regular wards, and there's just so much vision control on this bot side where they do have that split push set up. So it makes it basically impossible for Tempo Storm to face check what's going on in there, and they're able to pick up a dragon for free for it.
First Drake of the game goes down. It's a Cloud for GCU. Next will wind up being an Ocean. Not necessarily the most combative of dragons, but now that they're kind of setting up the movement between multiple lanes, the extra move speed won't be the worst thing in the world for them.
Right, and we see now that they have grabbed that dragon. Gold Coin United is going to flip their focus up to the top side of the map, try and get this last outer turret down on the side of Tempo Storm. Phoenix is making his way up there, picking up the blue buff on the way, while the mid lane is getting controlled by the dual lane. So we're going to see if they're able to make this rotation up to the top side, and if Tempo Storm is able to read it and react.
Well, so far, Gold Coin United looking a lot more sound in what they want to do. They have clear plans. They knew they wanted to try to get earlier advantages. The dives on the bottom side didn't work out, but they're not as hectic as they were last week, where they wound up being kind of catastrophic dives that threw the game away. They're not afraid to back away if the situation turns against them, and now they're kind of taking some of these smarter trades, and this may just be a coincidence for this game against Tempo Storm, who does tend to take the early game a little bit slower, but we spoke to Santorin. He said that Mad Life was the voice for our team when he wasn't in there in week 1. We struggled. The next week was the first week they were playing with him competitively. Now here they are after, about a solid week or 2 of practicing and working with him. And I mean, they've got themselves a gold advantage in this game. They got themselves an early lead, requesting the 20-minute mark, and they're putting pressure on the enemy side of the jungle, like you said,
right,
wanting to rotate for that objective.
They look a lot more coordinated with the jungler and support syncing up to get deep vision on the top side now that is their focus. You see the bot vision that they used to have so well controlled is now completely flipped up to the top side, and they're pressuring down this outer turret. Boss trying to hold on to it as best he can, but Gold Coin United's looking at the red buff first, just doing a really, really good job controlling whatever their focus is for this game.
Yeah, and Freeze and Sheep got to be a little bit careful, because that is not a safe jungle. As the root comes out from Zyra, Phoenix don't want it popping over the wall. He wants Sheep. The Sigil will pop, and so will Sheep's health bar. Multiple heals have to come out from that one. The heal from Varus, as well as just the heal coming out from the Empowered W on the Karma there. They can't even walk into their own jungle from the side of Tempo Storm.
This is what happens when you get a fed assassin who's able to roam into your jungle. You just can't really contest the vision, because as soon as you drop a ward down, you could be getting blown up. And they do have a decent amount of catch on the side of Gold Coin United. It's not the typical kind of catch that you see, but Zyra has a root, Jhin has his long-range snare, Phoenix can hop over walls very, very easily, and then if you do try and contest and fight them, they have a Shen on the far side of the map ready to join in with his ultimate or his teleport.
Like you said before, it's not the traditional kind of catch. Like, you don't have, like, chain CC with like an Ari Charm or an Elise Cocoon, but you have longer range, safer CC, and if you're able to utilize that and then bring your assassin and just blow up that one target, you're able to do things like force them away from their own top tower, as the third one of the game goes over to GCU.
GCU doing a really good job this game of just controlling the pace of the game. We talked about how a lot of the teams in the challenger scene seem to be struggling with what to do in the mid game. Gold Coin United saying that is not the case with us. We know exactly what we want to do. Set up the 1-3-1 and start pressuring turrets down with the help of Phoenix. But now Patrick's caught out in the bot lane. He's going to get jumped on. He's going to go down.
Yeah, it's trying to send the Rise to split push against the Shen, and unfortunately with their jungle completely lost to them, Rek'Sai's able to just come around the side and knock them down. Sion wound up using the ultimate, trying to get in there to save his mid laner, but it's not working out, and Tempo Storm...
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, it looks like it. Phoenix in the top lane, kind of pushing away. Tempo Storm, I mean, you made the Tempo Drizzle joke before. They've lost Tempo
I didn't
in
make
this
that
game.
joke. That joke was in the script.
You read that joke
I read
before?
That. I read that, and I did not tell them to take it out. So Gold Coin United, one thing that happens is when you spend so much time focused around the top side of the map, your vision drops off on the bottom. So after Gold Coin United had put so much focus there, Tempo Storm had nothing on the bot side. Gold Coin's able to swing behind and pick off the Rise. That's ultimately how they're able to get this kill. You see everyone concentrated around the top side here, so Tempo Storm's not even thinking, oh, Hatrix needs to be scared, but you know, here comes Rek'Sai chasing him down. Solo's baiting Hatrix to keep trading with him. And then next thing you know, oh, there's a Rek'Sai behind me? What the?
Yeah, and we saw Solo holding on to his taunt for that entire time. Once it blinks both the summoners, the cleanse and the flash from the Rise off of that as well. So either Hatrix just, like you said, did not see it coming, and GCU set that one up. They had their dual lane in the mid lane pushing it up. Their wave management has been pretty solid so far. The only one they didn't have control of was the bottom lane, and they will just collapse on it.
Yeah, it is very difficult for Shen to outpush a Ryze who's able to basically clear the wave and run away easily enough, and all you have as a Shen is a Tiamat and a Balmy Cinder, or now at a Sunfire Cape. So all you got to do is, you know, hold on to the lane versus the Ryze while your 4-man core on the other side makes most of the plays. Now Tempo Storm deciding to put the Scion up against Shen, have Ryze more grouped up, but I mean, they're far enough behind now, basically 6K, that it is really hard to directly confront them 1v1. And, you know, on the side of Gold Coin United, they've shown a lot of skill at understanding how to control one side of the map.
Yeah, Gold Coin United, this early game has pretty much been, they gave up first blood, but ever since then, map movements or counter map movements, like not letting the bottom lane snowball out of control in favor of Tempo Storm, being there to counteract any of the Scion roams or the Lee Sin dives that they wanted to get into action. They've just been on top of the ball ever since then. They got themselves an 8-3 kill lead. They've taken 3-0 towers. They've taken the only dragon that spawned on the map. They got themselves a solid gold advantage in this game as well, and now they're just continuously pushing up, making the enemy jungle unsafe. But if you're side of Tempo Storm, you gotta kind of wonder what you're doing. You do have a Ryze, so you will eventually have late game ridiculous Ryze damage, but you mean your Varus pick that's considered a lane bully hasn't necessarily worked out. Your top lane Scion, personally, I have no idea what that's going to do in the late game besides be really hard to kill.
Right, and it is something that's going to be difficult for Tempo Storm to make a play. They'll probably have to find some creative usage of the Realm Warp to create an odd man kind of pick situation.
Yeah, they do have that.
Right, and I mean, the difficult thing is that Gold Coin United's vision control has been so good that it is really hard to find a way to surprise them. And I think, you know, Loco Doco's probably pretty happy with how this game's going so far, I gotta say. There hasn't been too many lapses in vision for Gold Coin United, and they definitely hasn't been exploited for any of them. So overall, a really good game out of them so far as they pick up their second dragon, showing good objective control as well.
Yep, 2 Drakes to none in favor of Gold Coin United, as the waves are pushing out against them ever so slightly. Tempo Storm has kind of, the response so far has been buy a lot of control wards, regain control of our jungle, and slowly but surely push lanes out. If anybody's going to wind up going out by themselves, this time around it's going to be Quas. If he's going to wind up going down, it's going to take them a very long time, and Tempo Storm should be able to respond if multiple people go to deal with their Quas.
Sure, but as much as it's nice as it is to keep fighting over vision for Tempo Storm, at some point they need to do something more, because they are losing this game. Their turrets are slowly getting worked down, and just throwing out a Varus ultimate like that, I don't think is the play that's going to get them back into the game.
I mean, they win the vision battle, but they may not have won the vision war if the Chain of Corruption did wind up going down. They secure themselves their red buff. So very small incremental things they're taking back for themselves, but I mean, they're still not entirely in control of their own side of the map as a curtain call opens up here from Mash. Gets a couple of shots down, trying to force back Freeze and Sheep. The rest of Gold Coin United are now uniting against this mid lane tower. It's already been taken down below half HP. The top lane tower as well has been taken down extremely, extremely low from the constant pressure. And while GCU may not be the fastest team to kind of rush down and take these towers, slowly but surely they themselves are whittling down what Tempo Storm has left.
Not fast, but very controlled. And this is what I was saying, where you can't just keep fighting over vision. You need to make a play eventually, because otherwise this happens. You're standing there, you see them, there's no surprises, but you can't actually stop them, as Shen even rotated over so that they could guarantee that last hit onto the mid lane inner turret, grabbing that one. The first of the inner turrets down, as now Boss is caught a little bit out of position, but he's a tanky sign. He should be just fine.
Yeah, I was a little bit concerned at first, and then I saw how little damage he was actually taking from anything that was happening around him. So while Quas will be okay to stay alive, that mid lane tower was not. So 4 towers now for Gold Coin United. They have been arguing over, or battling over vision on the top side of the map. A Sentinel trying to stay in that red side jungle of his own. Does want to getting caught out here. The Stand United is being channeled by Shen. Phoenix, in the meantime, has just jumped into the base and taken down Karma. Sentinel will eventually fall, which means, I was going to say, GCU are slowly rotating up for this top tower, but they just explode.
Right, I mean, GCU picks up 2 very quick kills on Tempo Storm, and now they can decide to keep pressuring in this top lane or potentially go back to the Baron. Looks like they're deciding to go for this top inhibitor turret, but Quas is going to let that happen. He gets an ult off, and now he's chasing down the members of Gold Coin United.
Yeah, kind of locks up a lot of those members. Health bars are dropping extremely low. The curtain call has come back up, though, but not before Freeze takes down Mad Life. The curtain call being kind of used as cover fire in this situation, as Quas just tanks up all of those shots. Does wind up getting the yell down, slows down onto Solo. The actual wind up missing. Phoenix is still there. Deadly Flourish comes out, but Quas is not going to go down.
I mean, if there's one thing Sion does well, it's be an annoying, tanky character.
I was going to say maybe not die, because technically Sion is.
Which is funny, because his passive is good to die on. As we see, Phoenix just making the life of a support hell, picking him off in his jungle when he just wants to rotate over and help his teammates out. Gonna pick up a quick kill there, as Sentinel had got caught out on his Krugs previously. He drops as well, giving the top inner turret for Gold Coin United to take. And with that, they continue to extend their lead. They try and push a little bit too far here, wanting to focus down this inhibitor turret, but there's enough tools available for Tempo Storm to deter this push. Quas's ultimate, the General Poke coming out of Freeze, as well as the Rise, who does end up having to flash away, of course.
Yeah, and actually Hatrick's almost going down to those bullets coming out from the curtain call. Deathfire touch, not enough to take him down. Mad Life did suffer his first death of this game on that push as well, but going back to Phoenix, just blowing up Karma, just going into the enemy base. This is the pick that you traded away for the Rise. So if you take a look at kind of just 1-for-1, what you traded for in Champion Select, you have a 5-1-3 LeBlanc against the 1-3-1 Rise, who even with the Lee Sin's help, can't take down Santorin, being caught out a little bit.
And I just said initially that I thought the trade seemed somewhat profitable, at least because we had seen Phoenix on LeBlanc at least once before, and it was not particularly impressive. This time around, he gets going early with the help of Santorin, and he's been able to snowball since then. So a little bit of a gambit in the draft that has not paid off at all for Tempo Storm, as not only has Phoenix been going off, but the Rise has not done anything particularly impressive either.
Well, this is actually a pretty interesting thing. One of the strengths of Santorin when he was in the NALCS, which he did get a lot of flack for kind of pretty much being a ward for TSM, but
Bjergsen's third summoner?
Bjergsen's third summoner spell. In this case, he kind of did the same thing for Phoenix. He got Phoenix an advantage. Phoenix knows how to utilize that advantage. We saw him picking on the enemy jungler, but that's let Santorin kind of do what he wants to do. Always been known to have high kill participation, has 80% kill participation in this game right now. Always known to have a very high ward count. He's constantly been going in with Mad Life and getting control of these areas of the map. This is GCU, that's their experience. They're utilizing what their strengths are as individual players, and if this is Mad Life's voice directing them, that's great. If this is Loco Doco coaching them and making them work as a cohesive unit, this is great, but this is a different GCU than we saw in week 1 and 2.
Right, now they are baiting the Baron pretty heavily here, making it very dangerous for Tempo Storm to walk in here. Sentinel, not sure if it's safe. There's the Death Brush. Not going to get caught out yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Never say never.
As he gets caught out now.
Sentinel, the trap has been sprung, and Mash will pick up that kill with the curtain call.
Right, and the nice thing about
He jinxed it.
I didn't jinx it. It's going to happen. As we see Gold Coin United going for another bait attempt, maybe going a little too hard on that now, given that the fact that they had picked off the jungler. Quas is going to be the one to face check now. He doesn't quite as much damage as that Lee Sin.
He doesn't necessarily go down nearly as easily. The Chain of Corruption go down onto Santorin as Quas. Doesn't look like his health bar has moved all that much. Will wind up having to flash away. He has no real team around him as they're all kind of disengaging. This is a 5v4 situation in favor of Gold Coin United. Tempo Storm have been forced to take the long road home, which means GCU is going to push up this mid lane.
And you're going to be able to see if Gold Coin United can actually grab anything off this. They're going to try and look for this mid inhibitor turret. Last push like this was deterred, but they do have that pathing advantage, and they're going to look like they can grab this turret as Quas tries to distract them all again.
He just suddenly takes a ton of damage there. They all focus down Quas, and Phoenix picks up the kill.
It's what happens when you're a tank. You think you're so tanky all the time, they haven't been able to kill you yet, and then finally when they all focus fire really hard on you one time, you drop a lot faster than you think you normally would.
Yeah, Quas just gets taunted and taken down underneath his own tower nonetheless. So Gold Coin United, oh, I thought they were setting up another Death Brush, but the Shen Sword gave it away.
Right, a little bit obvious there, given that Tempo Storm did have the ward to spot where that went. Once again, Freeze sniping him, saying, we know you're there. You can go home now.
Well, GCU has not gone back since that initial catch on Sentinel, which kind of evolved into a couple of more kills and a couple more plays being made. So these members, decent amounts of gold in their pocket, they're going to go back and spend it, but they've already set up vision on the top side of the jungle. The Baron, 35 minutes in almost, 34.5 minutes into this game. Baron is a very real objective that they can take.
Right, they have to get the reset off here because they were getting pretty low. We see Santorin ulting, down to the boss side to grab the next dragon, which is another Ocean Drake for Gold Coin United. They got 2 of them now. Going to be able to sustain up in those extended objective situations, and we'll have to see what they try and do now. Soul did TP in into that team fight, but he still has his ultimate available, so they'll likely set up the 4-1 once again. I wouldn't mind seeing them be a little bit more aggressive once they got the pick on the jungler. They have a Rek'Sai, a champion who's actually relatively tanky. It's Phoenix. Thinks he's going to catch somebody out, but he's standing on a ward. He's forced to flash away. Not the best play out of him.
No, and the Scion ultimate is going to be used as well, trying to catch down the Phoenix. Redemption is going to wind up being used here by Mad Life. Heals Phoenix up a decent amount. Does get the Distort away from the Chains of Corruption, so Tempo Storm used a lot to try to catch Phoenix, but he does sneak his way out.
Ultimately, neither team going to be able to come out too ahead for that. Phoenix had to lose his flash for it. Tempo Storm lost some cooldowns as well. And now both teams are kind of butting heads around the mid lane.
Oh, no!
Phoenix doesn't get out of range. She's able to pop Sheep, but Phoenix is getting low. The Shenel comes in.
Oh, and the
Fight's still going on.
The Rise Walmart goes behind, and looks like Quas is going to come in, winds up picking up the kill onto that LeBlanc. The Stranglethorns goes out, tries to zone every way. Hatrix and Quas are in the front, but the rest of Tempo Storm has been zoned out by Mad Life's ultimate. Quas taking a lot of damage now. There's going to be a couple of parting shots as Tempo Storm, they need to run away.
That was a pretty crazy fight that happened there. It starts out with Phoenix getting a pick on the Sheep, but then Quas walks in behind him. They switch focus onto Rise, and then Rise ports behind. It was a very almost random team fight where frontliners are coming in from behind, and backliners are in the front line out of nowhere.
That was the aggressive Phoenix that we kind of know and love as he goes himself into a sticky situation, gets himself out, only just to go back in again.
Right, I mean, it was a nice play to pick up the kill. We see the Shenel coming in. Patrick channeled the ult, swings behind, but then Quas is right there, so Phoenix bumps into him. Santorin's frontlining against the rest of Tempo Storm as Goldcoin United is trying to focus down Quas. They're going to get him very, very low and ultimately look like they're going to finish him off, but there's no root coming out from Mash, so he's able to walk away in what ends up being just a 1-for-1.
Lee Sin and Varus zoned away from that Stranglethorn in the middle of the fight. Couldn't really pass the so-called line of scrimmage that Mad Life kind of threw down in front of them. So Varus, a couple of piercing arrows were really his teamfight contribution there. He had used the Chain of Corruption earlier to try to catch on to Phoenix, so it wasn't available for that fight. So Tempo Storm, they still wound up trading evenly 1-for-1 in a situation where they had already used a lot of their ultimates just to try to catch Phoenix.
For sure, and now Goldcoin United stalling out. This is something that's been happening to them a lot. They had a really, really good mid-game in terms of what they were able to do with their macro and vision control. Now that they're focusing more on the Baron, they seem a little unable to get much going. They did get the one pick on Lee Sin, but after that couldn't convert it into an actual objective.
44 minutes and 7 seconds average game time. The longest average game time in North American Challenger. That's Goldcoin United's, well, I'm going to say play style, but that's what they got.
That's their slogan.
44 minutes or bust.
Yep. And it looks like they're on track for another one potentially if they don't start moving a little faster here.
And that's the questions that we had for them. Like, they were answering a lot of them earlier on when they were putting vision down, but can they seal the deal was the big question. As Quas uses his ultimate, charges into a tower. It is going to wind up going down, but Quas, his health bar is dropping already. Santorin, however, doing his best Quas impression on the other side. Quas will go down, he'll get reborn in his undying passive, but Santorin's going to go down with a Guardian Angel proc, and the Realm Warp just exits stage left.
I don't know what Mash Me was thinking there. He starts opening up with his ultimate, but the reborn Scion is right in front of him, starts wailing on him, drops him to below half health while he's not paying attention, seemingly trying to cover Santorin's Guardian Angel, and ultimately a 1-for-0 as Tempo Storm seemed a little greedy to try and finish off that mid lane turret, get a little bit extra gold into their pockets. Quas loses his life on the back of that one.
I mean, they traded their biggest frontline threat for their first tower of the game, and that's going to open up an opportunity for the side of Goldcoin United to go for Baron, and that means that Sentinel's got to go for a steal, or he's got to be kind of the pseudo frontline. He's got a Dead Man's Plate to his name and a Spectre's Cowl, but he's not the tanky kind of threat that Scion is, and he might want it going down from Phoenix over here, popping over the wall. Sentinel is going to get the safeguard shield, winds up going back in. He will get taken down by Mad Life. That's going to be a Baron going over to the side of Goldcoin United.
A little scary there as Lee Sin did get over the wall and survive for a couple seconds in the pit, but Goldcoin United did a good job stopping damage onto Baron until they were able to finish off the Lee Sin. They kill Sentinel, they kill the Baron, and now they are going to see if they can start cracking some of these inhibitor turrets.
Well, Solo with his newfound Baron buff, content to use that teleport down into the bottom side of the map. He's going to be pushing down on that tower, but Quas in the meantime sees an opportunity with that teleport being used, going to find a free pathway onto Mash. He winds up having to flash away, and Quas in the back line, now he's taking a brunt of the pain, but Solo has grouped back up, and he's trying to split up the team. His taunt will go across, but nobody will fall for it, as Quas has to disengage with the rest of Tempo Storm.
It was a good attempt getting on to Mash Me. They almost dropped him, but he still had his flash available, flashed away at about 25% HP, and then opened up with the Jhin ultimate. Tempo Storm doesn't actually lose anybody off of it, though they are starting to lose some turrets from that engage.
Yeah, Tempo Storm lost the tower on the bottom side of the map, the last outer tower, and then their mid lane inhibitor tower has been exposed. And with Goldcoin United's Baron buff still relatively fresh on the rest of them, they're going to wind up having that for an extended period of time to now move up towards the top lane, control that open inhibitor in the mid lane, just kind of do what they've been doing for the past 20 or so minutes.
With the additional benefit of a Baron buff and inhibitor down. So it's going to be much easier for Gold Coin United to group up as 4, send them into the top or bot lane, Shen on the other side, and then TP them in if they decide to go for a dive. And ultimately, Gold Coin United look posed to win this game in the next couple of minutes here, assuming that they're able to actually convert a little bit more off this Baron buff.
It's going to be difficult for Quas to kind of split up against Solo now that the fact that he has that Titanic Hydra. He has a Guardian Angel that has not been popped quite yet. This is, of course, the Baron buff minions welling away. Quas may not be able to kind of go toe-to-toe with the Shen like he has been able to do in some of these engages, although he has also been kind of more favored to group up and try to use his ultimate to catch somebody out. But Tempo Storm, whereas GCU has kind of been more on the same page this game with their warding, with their coordination as to what they kind of wanted to do. Execution is still a little bit of a question mark. They've kind of been communicating better. Tempo Storm has kind of had a front half and a back half where we see Quas kind of going in and maybe Sentinel around the area as well. But the rest of the DPS in the backline have been very afraid to step past this Rek'Sai and Shen.
Right, and I think the big thing is the Rise hasn't been able to get much going either. Here we see him finally collapsing on the solo with the help of Quas, but it's a little too late as it opens up the mid lane for Gold Coin United to move in and actually try and take this one down.
Yeah, the open inhib is right there, so already chunking that one below half HP. Rise has gotten his late game Rise state so far, as he did do a decent amount of damage to Solo, but speaking of decent amounts of damage, Sheet's gonna go down from the Deathfire Touch as Mash with that 4th critical strike shot eviscerates it.
Right, and Solo at the same time was still pushing down top lane. He grabs the top inhibitor turret, opening that one up for the rest of his team to rotate up and grab their 2nd inhibitor.
Well, 1 inhibitor falls, the support falls, and a 2nd inhibitor shall follow. The Baron buff has been quite effectively used now by the side of Gold Coin United. Still got a couple of seconds left on that one. Nexus towers are exposed for Tempo Storm. The Elder Dragon is going to be spawning on the map, and with 3 Elemental Drakes underneath their belt, Gold Coin United going to take the safe play. There's no way that Tempo Storm can respond.
Right, Baron buff's running out. Time to replace it with a different one. They're going to grab the Elder Drake buff before focusing down that bot inhibitor most likely. And honestly, Gold Coin United is so far ahead at this point that they can basically probably start things off with a Jhin ultimate and just start poking people off the turret and take that one pretty uncontested.
Hey, they can start off with a Jhin ultimate and delete Sheep, because that's what happened with Magic.
Yeah, I mean, he took 1,000 damage crit, and then the Deathfire Touch was like, you're dead.
That's kind of, it's a very satisfying feeling as an AD carry player, because you're usually not used for utility in this meta. You get that late game Jhin build, you get that Infinity Edge, you finally are able to pop somebody on the team with one last shot of your ultimate.
Yeah, and who are you bullying, Tom?
I'm bullying the Karma.
You're bullying supports.
You know, no.
They've had it so tough for so long. They're finally in a meta they can flourish a little bit.
Have they? Because I'll give them a Deadly Flourish. That's
Hey.
bad karma. I'll keep going.
Yeah, I stopped. All right. We see, like I said, the Jhin opening things up, just trying to force him off the turret as the rest of Gold Coin United moves in. But Phoenix gets a little too close. It gets reeled up by the Rise. It forces Solo to ult in, but this is still buying time for the rest of Gold Coin United to group up around this bot inhibitor turret. This is the last objective for them to really take down at this point, and they have the true damage burn to help them do so.
That's right, the tower already being chunked down to about half HP. Quas deciding he wants to go in, but Sentinel is going to get popped. Mash picks that kill up and goes unstoppable. Bottom lane tower will fall, and the last inhibitor has been exposed here for Tempo Storm. Gold Coin United with the Elder Dragon burning away on them. Going to be slowly pushing up for this inhibitor. Quas at the front line, trying to do as much as he can to clear out the minions. Rise actually getting caught out of position. It looks like he tried to flash there, but he wants it going down. And with their mid laner gone, they all focus Quas. Now Quas has fallen, and although he will revive, I don't think there's any chance of Tempo Storm coming back in this one. 3 inhibitors down, open Nexus towers, and a Phoenix charged into their back lines. It looks like Gold Coin United all but take this game 1.
Mostly off the back of Phoenix. He had a really strong early game and mid game, although it was a pretty large team performance as well, as they all managed to contribute with the help of that vision control. In particular, a really strong showing out of Mad Life.
Yeah, and that was just really good coordination from Gold Coin United. That's what really won them the game. Yeah, Phoenix had a really good performance. He got that advantage a little bit early on by having Santorin kind of come in and get that early gank on around like level 4 or so. It was a response to the First Blood pretty much. From that point forward, between Santorin and Mad Life's vision control and the ability to unlock Phoenix on the map, Gold Coin United, I mean, they were in the lead for a very long time.
Right, and we talked about how a couple things that we had previously seen out of Gold Coin United not working seemed to come together this game. The fact that they got the LeBlanc again, and Phoenix actually started snowballing like crazy. The fact that Mad Life was not forced onto this melee support, and even though the laning phase was not going great for them. Once they started getting the help of Santorin and Phoenix were rotating down, trying to get dives off around the bot lane turret, they finally started getting that advantage back. And then once the first kind of turrets started dropping, we saw just how strong Gold Coin United can be with that vision advantage, because Mad Life seemed to do a great job controlling the jungle of whatever side they were looking to take objectives on.
Yeah, and once they got that vision advantage down, they were able to kind of take different points of control around the map, and they really opened up trades that were in their favor. They took multiple fights in the middle stages of the game that they were just lopsided. There's 3-for-1 fights. There were 2-for-1 for 2-for-0 fights. Everything that kind of wound up happening, including this fight here, where it's Quas teleporting in to try to defend this tower, but it's GCU that wound up turning it around.
Right, both teams kind of get baited a little bit here. Gold Coin United baited into finishing off the turret. Tempo Storm baited into fighting this as they were able to drop solo extremely quickly, but they were unable to focus on any of the carries. So Phoenix was left relatively untouched. Santorin got a good double knockup, good double distortion out of Phoenix. And of course, Mash the whole time was unloading with his Jhin. So what looked like it could have been an okay fight for Tempo Storm initially quickly gets turned around, and it's an easy 3-for-1.
Well, that's one of the things that we've noticed in this game entirely is a lot of things looked okay for Tempo Storm, but they never necessarily had like what their composition wanted to do. They weren't really able to execute it properly. We saw a lot of focus on the bottom side of the map, even Quas drawing his attention down there with one of his first ultimates, just kind of roaming down and waiting for it to be set up. It was snuffed out by the side of GCU. And then in general, the Sion pickup, while it was extremely tanky and annoying for Solo to have to deal with, it didn't seem to kind of be the thing that meshed everything together.
After that first attempt in the bot lane kind of went bad for them, not bad like they died or anything, but just they couldn't get anything. It really seemed like they didn't know what else they could do. And you know, obviously some credit goes to GCU for doing a great job controlling them, but at the same time, they didn't really do a good job of porting the Rise or the rest of the team in to collapse on one of the 1-3-1ers. We saw Phoenix splitting a lot. We saw Solo splitting a lot. You got to try and pick one of them off and start doing more trades, because if you just start following the other team around the whole time when you're both split up, it's still going to favor the team with the gold lead.
That's right. I mean, you saw the Realm Warp usage coming up from Hatrix was not necessarily the best. This is something they may want to revisit in the draft phase, because now Tempo Storm, they're going to have their choice of side selection. They won't have to be the ones banning Camille, Rengar, and Kha'Zix. They're not going to be the ones that have to do a mandatory ban of those 3 characters you just don't want falling into the opponent's hands, which is GCU, the Vi, the Aurelion Sol, the Ivern, maybe left open.
Right, and that's, of course, what we're going to have to track. A number of teams have been, you know, kind of straying away from the standard red side bans. Here we see the LeBlanc left up. We'll have to see if Gold Coin United subscribes to that kind of thought as process as well.
Well, we're going to wait and see, because we are headed for a break. But when we come back, we'll see if Gold Coin United can finish with a 2-0 or if Tempo Storm will turn the tides of the series. We're back in just a few minutes. Is going to have to dash, is going to have to flash, but the chase after from Sentinel, is the damage quite there? Quas is going to wind up landing the axe, and he does pick up first blood. And the one time he thinks his own jungle is safe,
or still not.
The second time he thinks the jungle is safe, there's Phoenix going on a killing spree. Turns into the choo-choo train and tries to go in, but the tower will go down. Mad Life picks that up, but Rise picks up the first kill of the fight, taking down the tank, but Zyra on the backside will wind up picking up Lee Sin.
As he gets gonna go now.
Sentinel, the trap has been sprung, and Mash will pick up that kill with the curtain call. Sentinel is going to get the safeguard shield. Winds up going back in. He will get taken down by Mad Life. That's going to be a Baron going over to the side of Gold Coin United. Has gotten his late game Rise state so far, as he did do a decent amount of damage to Solo, but speaking of decent amounts of damage, she's going to go down from the Deathfire touch as Mash with that 4th critical strike shot